Welcome to Focus on Gaza. I'm Imran Gabda. Coming up on this week's program.
There are some signs of potential clash between the Obama administration and the Netanyahu new government.
The end of the affair? Are U.S. and Israeli relations set to change? And sick and stuck. One family struggled to make it out of Gaza for urgent medical help. Now, when it comes to friends, Israel can always count on the United States. At least that was the case under U.S. President George W. Bush. But with a new U.S. administration in the White House committed to an independent Palestinian state, can the right-wing government of Benyamin Netanyahu count on America's unquestioned support? Or are the two allies set to clash? Jackie Rowland sent us this report from Jerusalem.
Memories of the Gaza war are still fresh and raw for the Palestinians. And for Israel, it was the defining moment of the last year. But it was a war that took place amid only muted criticism from the international community. The United States, in particular, spoke of Israel's right to defend itself against attacks aimed at civilians in the south. Senior American officials, including the mayor of New York, came to show solidarity with the southern Israeli town of Sderot. His comments were typical of many Americans who pointed the blame at Hamas.
Mayor Bloomberg, what do you think about the dozens of Palestinian civilians killed in Gaza?
I think it's a disgrace, and you should talk to Hamas. They're putting their own people at risk, and it's an outrage. If Hamas would focus on building a country rather than destroying another one, those people wouldn't get injured and wouldn't get killed.
The war provided a convenient backdrop for the Israeli election campaign. The opposition leader, Benyamin Netanyahu, made full use of it in his campaign ads. He juxtaposed pictures of the fighting with various prophecies of gloom that he had made in recent years. The campaign was clearly effective, since Netanyahu is now Prime Minister. Days before Netanyahu's first meeting in Washington with President Obama, members of his government were once again using the case study of Gaza to argue against pulling out of settlements in the West Bank.
Unfortunately, with the Gaza, we hope that it would become a showcase where the Palestinians could demonstrate good governance, end of terror, good, neighbors relationship, and then we could have moved on. But this was not the case, but we're still not giving up.
Benjamin Netanyahu is maintaining deliberate ambiguity over where he stands on a future Palestinian state. The new US administration has been crystal clear. The Israeli occupation of Palestinian territory needs to end, and the principle of two states for two peoples is the only solution.
Netanyahu is using Gaza as a pretext not to talk about a Palestinian state. His argument is that since there are effectively two separate leaderships, one in Gaza, the other in the West Bank, the most he's willing to offer the Palestinians right now is limited self-rule.
While Netanyahu used Gaza in his election campaign, Barack Obama was not above using Israel in his bid for the White House. He made the traditional visit to the Western Wall and the almost equally traditional visit to show solidarity with the people of Sderot. But all of this was before he won the presidency. Now that he has the power and prestige of office, he can be expected to take a tougher stand with Israel and with Benjamin Netanyahu.
I would imagine that as human beings they may well establish a certain rapport, but there really is a genuine sense in which these two men, almost regardless of whatever personal friendship or relationship they may build up, genuinely have very different views of the way the region's going, and I doubt that any kind of personal chemistry, good as it may be, will be able entirely to offset that.
It's almost exactly 10 years since the deadline set by the Oslo Accords for a final status agreement between Israel and the Palestinians. A reminder of how far this process has slipped since a Democrat was last in the White House. The meeting in Washington next week between the new US President and the new Israeli Prime Minister will give the first clues as to whether there will be another such handshake under Barack Obama. Jackie Rowland, Al Jazeera.
Now, to take a closer look at how the US-Israeli relationship might change under Obama and Netanyahu, let's go now to my colleague Abdurrahim Fukara in our Washington, D.C. broadcast center.
Thank you, Imran. Well, to discuss these issues, I'm joined by Ron Campius, the Washington bureau chief of the Jewish Telegraphic Agency, and Eitan Arusi, former Israeli spokesperson. Let me start with you, Eitan. As you know, there's a lot of rumblings in Washington about a possible clash between the Obama administration and the government of Prime Minister Benyamin Netanyahu over the issue of Middle East peace and the two-state solution. What do you think?
First of all, I really hope that there will be no clash between the United States and Israel, because we're talking about a great friendship between the two countries, because Israel and the United States share the same values, and in fact Israel is probably the only democracy or real democracy in the Middle East. Secondly, I believe that indeed there are some signs of potential clash between the Obama administration and the Netanyahu new government. However, I believe that both sides will try to work things out together in order to solve these agreements.
But when it comes down to it, there are serious fundamental differences, it seems, between the government of Netanyahu and the Obama administration. Is the friendship that he's going to, that Eitan was talking about, enough to avert such a clash?
We'll see. The way I look at it, the AIPAC, the pro-Israel lobby here, just had a conference. It had its annual conference. Its motto was "Relationships Matter." Joe Biden, the vice president, gave the talk yesterday, the final talk, and his answer to that was, "Show me." This is a show me kind of deal. Now, when a husband and a wife have a chat and one starts "Relationships Matter" and the other one says "Show me," you know things are a little bit tense. So they've had a little bit of marriage counseling. They seem to be a little closer. There were things that Netanyahu said during the AIPAC conference about focusing on all aspects of negotiations, not just economic aspects, which is what he talked about earlier, that show that maybe that he's coming a little closer to the Obama administration. And conversely, the Obama administration is making tougher sounds about confronting Iran.
Now, when you say a little tense, talking about the relationship, how little is little, do you think?
Well, there's a substantial difference between this administration and the previous administration. Certainly, if you volunteered a question, let's say, to Condoleezza Rice in the last administration about settlements, she would repeat the line that we prefer that neither side. She wouldn't even directly address the settlement. She would say we would prefer that neither side create facts on the ground. Here is Joe Biden going in front of AIPAC, the pro-Israel lobby, and he's volunteering. He's saying outright, you have to freeze settlement growth. So there's definitely a ratcheting up, I think, of the pressure on settlements.
But I believe that even previous administrations always talked about preventing Israel from continuing settlements in the West Bank specifically. However, I think that this point specifically of building more settlements or expanding settlements, I think that from Israel's point of view, and I believe from the international point of view, should be very important, because Israel withdrew from the Gaza Strip. In 2005, I know, I was there in the summer of 2005 in Gaza Strip, how we took all the settlers from Gaza Strip, and what did we get back? What did Israel got back? Hamastan.
We know that there are various parties, not necessarily the United States, talking almost directly to Hamas, the Europeans, for example. Now, when it comes to the Obama administration having some sort of contact with Hamas, to what extent do you feel that that's actually going to rattle the Benjamin Netanyahu government and contribute to this clash that a lot of people are talking about here in D.C.?
There is a potential there, because certainly Hillary Clinton has changed the parameters on Hamas. She says we're not going to deal directly with Hamas, but we're okay with the Palestinian National Unity Government that includes with it Hamas, as long as the Palestinian National Unity Government commits to the three quartet requirements, recognizing Israel, renouncing terrorism, etc. And that's something that the Israelis are very skeptical of. They don't perceive Hamas as settling for the Department of Cleaning Up the Streets and leaving foreign affairs and security to Mahmoud Abbas. They see, as long as Hamas is in the government, Hamas wants control of the government. So there's a potential there, I think, for tension.
Now, the President Barack Obama, in his inauguration speech, he said clearly that he wanted to start a new relationship with the Muslim world to a lot of people in the region, that is synonymous with finding a solution to the Palestine issue. And if it takes talking to Hamas, well, I guess that's just what the Obama administration is going to have to do ultimately. How much is that going to be a problem in terms of the relationship with Benyamin Netanyahu, in your opinion, Eitan?
The United States believes that solving the Palestinian issue will assist the world, the international community, with the Iranian nuclear problem. However, Israel believed quite the opposite, that if the world, the international community, will deal with the Iranian problem. By the way, when I say Iran, I mean also Hezbollah and Hamas, because they are definitely Iranian proxies and kind of front arms for the Iranians.
At least in the point of view of the Israeli government.
In the point of view of even the international community, because the whole world knows how Iran is financing Hamas and Hezbollah, and nobody in the Iranian government says that it doesn't exist.
A lot of people in Israel and in the United States, they look at Hamas as a problem, as an obstacle to peace. But ultimately, it's not Hamas that's occupying Palestinian land, it's the Israelis. To what extent do you think that the Obama administration will adopt that particular position when dealing with the government of Benjamin Netanyahu?
Oh, I think that there's probably going to be more agreement there. I think first of all, about whatever the White House thinks, and I'm not sure that they would even agree that that Hamas is an attractive interlocutor. But whatever they think, they've got a Congress to deal with, and I think there's wall-to-wall support in Congress for not dealing directly with Hamas, and talking about Republicans and Democrats as well. So I think that there will be points of tension, I think, on settlements, on the whole business of recognizing Israel as a Jewish state, but not on Hamas.
Thank you, gentlemen. Now back to Imran in Doha.
Thanks for that, Abdurrahim. After the break, we take the view from Ramallah.